Hello, and welcome back to the Cinematography Salon podcast, where our mission is simply celebrating cinematography. I'm David Kruta, founder of Cinematography Salon and producer of the show. Recently, we traveled to Poland for Camerimage, where we spent a week surrounded by filmmakers, DPs, and friends new and old. And while we were there, we recorded something unforgettable, a series of conversations and deep dives into what makes cinematography truly magical. Our fantastic hosts, Ava Benjamin Shorr and Lauren Guiteras, led the discussions with their insight, curiosity, and passion for the art, working alongside Topher Hammond, who co-produced and ran cameras to make sure every interview looked and sounded top-notch. A massive thank you to the team at Fujifilm, who made these episodes possible and our trip unforgettable. Their continued involvement and support of this community is deeply appreciated, and we look forward to collaborating well into the future. We'll be releasing these special episodes alongside Season 3 of the podcast, so stay tuned. If you love this craft as much as we do, you're in the right place. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of the Cinematography Salon podcast. For the next several episodes, we will be recording in Torun, Poland during the 32nd annual Camerimage Film Festival. My name is Ava Benjamin Shorr, and today I'm joined by my very special Camerimage co-host, Lauren Gutierrez. For today's episode, we would like to welcome Santiago González, cinematographer of Los Frikis, playing in the director's debut and cinematographer's debut categories at this year's Camerimage.
Yeah, one of the first things I was curious about, knowing the subject matter of the movie, is thinking, there's no way they actually were able to shoot this in Cuba. Yeah. It's, too censorious and all of that. When you're making a film that's critical, obviously, of the regime. So I was curious about principal photography taking place in the DR, because a couple sources say, you shot principal photography in the DR, but Cuba is also listed as a country of production on the Camerimage website. So I was wondering what, if any, was shot in Cuba, and how did you approach playing the DR for Cuba?
Yeah, we tried to go to Cuba and film. We kind of researched beforehand, certain films that had shot there. I think the most the closest one to our production date had been Fast and the Furious. And apparently they messed it up for everybody because they did not want anybody coming in. We did submit the script, and we submitted a doctored script. So we took out some things, but it's very hard to take out everything that the film is. We submitted it. We were told maybe a couple of days, but they didn't really want us there. And I know that there was a little bit of difficulty with the directors traveling to Cuba. So they didn't want any U.S. citizens to go over there. I was born in Mexico. I'm still a Mexican citizen. And they were basically saying hey, maybe you and the actors just go for a couple of days and you run it. And primarily, I think it was always kind of from the start that we were going to shoot in the Dominican Republic. I think they have some tax incentives and new studios that they opened up there. But we were looking to specifically shoot the Malecón in Cuba and just kind of have that be the most representative shot of actually shooting in Havana. As far as shooting in the Dominican Republic, the sanitarium location that we found, we searched for a while. At times we thought that we were going to be inland, and we ended up being in Samaná in Las Terrenas. And some of the inland locations that we found were gorgeous. We found a couple in the mountains, and it's in these valleys with farmhouses. And I really wanted to shoot in this location in the mountains, but getting equipment there would have been a nightmare. And so, it was considered for a little bit, but we ended up at Las Terrenas, which was really close to a lot of hotels. We were basically flying all of our crew stayed in hotels nearby. And yeah, we found this place that was kind of like a coconut farm that the sanitarium location took place in, and we ended up building some of the buildings with production design. And most of our locations for the beaches were literally nearby. And then we ended up shooting in Santo Domingo for Havana, and just really working with our location manager to find places that, we had we had this photo book that was basically Cuba, and we really tried to find places that looked like Havana, essentially. So we shot in Santo Domingo, in Las Terrenas, and Juan Dolio, And then there was a spot where it's Gustavo and the horse, the waterfall lake. That was a fight with production. There was actually like this river that was behind the sanitarium, but it was disgusting. And it didn't really look like the idyllic, like, kind of like, low setting that we were looking for. And so one of the directors and I took this like horseback tour to this like waterfall, and it was like, you had to be on a horse for like 1.5 miles, and then you'd come into this waterfall, and it was like this valley. And he was like, oh my goodness, we need to shoot here. And I was like, they're not gonna let us shoot here. It's crazy. Like, we would literally have to carry equipment on horseback. And he's like, we're gonna do it. And so we brought it up to production. They immediately said no. And they were like, we had to actually take like the producers to this spot, and we kind of scattered out, and they're like, okay, I think it's doable. And then it ended up being that location that we did that.
Taking them to show them, like, look at the beauty of this place, it's going to be worth it.
It was that, but, we were trying to show them that. They were just trying
to
logistics. Like, they were just interested in logistics. But we ended up, I have pictures of the cameras on horseback in baskets, like Caslow cases, and on horseback.
Wow.
Like,
That's so funny.
It was fun.
Yeah, you had cameras prepping out of the U.S. and then you went.
Yeah, everything was prepped out of the U.S. as far as camera and lenses. And I was fortunate enough to travel to my DAT, my first AC for a camera, out of LA. And then I brought out my B-cam operator, B-cam first and seconds, from Mexico. And it was kind of the crew that I worked down there with. So I was able to bring all my camera friends, and then my gaffer was also from Mexico, and then a lot of the support staff was from the Dominican.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear more about that. I think that, you're a US-based cinematographer, and I think that you kind of hear stories of like different working methodologies in different countries around the world, from cinematographers. Given that you kind of had like a mixed crew of US, Mexico, Dominican Republic crew, did you find that there was any methodology or working or certain types of ways that they did it in the DR that were maybe different from how you were used to doing it, that you guys maybe had to adapt or teach them how to adapt to, even like structural, who's in charge of lighting versus gripping,
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely that for sure. On the G&E side, the gaffer is the key grip and the gaffer. He just has support staff. So he is, the leader of G&E, basically. Yeah, so my gaffer was somebody that I'd worked with out of Mexico, and he kind of just took over everything. So whenever we didn't really have a lot of budget, so there wasn't anything on the grip side that was extensive, besides, bounces. And so in Mexico, they use scaffolding instead of like bigger stands. So they just build they just build this like pyramid of scaffolding to get a light very high up. And so that was kind of crazy. Yeah. But they do it so fast, it's insane. And I think they're just used to it, And so whenever I'd be like, oh no, I need that height, like I need the height like on this light. And they'd be like, okay, cool. Give us 5 minutes. And it's just like,
what?
And so were you carrying scaffolding on a truck or something?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So but I didn't know that. Like, it was just like, we were getting all of our equipment, as far as G&E, we were getting it out of Santo Domingo. And so, I just kind of told the gaffer, like, hey, I want this, I want these units, I want this for night, I want this for day. And he's just like, great. And then he kind of, kind of filled out the package. And I think it was like the first time that I was just like, hey, I need, I'm going to need that 360 for moonlight. And he's like, oh yeah, no worries. And then it was just like, it's like Legos.
That's so wild. Right. Because maybe like you're not checking the list, but you're guessing in your mind, they'll have Roadrunners, they'll have this or that.
Yeah,
and then
they'll have Long Johns or whatever. And it's just like, nope. It was just like, but it was so fast. It's incredibly fast. I don't know if you guys have worked in Mexico before, but it's amazing. Like the Mexico City crew is top notch. They don't do it like we do, but it works.
Yeah, and you have the advantage of being a Spanish speaker, of course, which I'm sure helps. Yeah,
it got a little messy because switching from Spanish to English, because bringing my two guys from LA, and then just like trying to quickly say something to them, and it, some of my crew knew English as well, some of them didn't, and so just like the switching between English and Spanish was wild, and then like the crew kind of taught each other their own languages, and so that was awesome. And yeah, it was really fantastic crew. Yeah.
I'd love to know a little bit more about like your prep and scouting process. You talked about like the Cuba photo book. I'm curious, like if you had been to Havana yourself or had any kind of personal reference for like the lighting, the color palette, the textures, the things that you needed to kind of make sure that you were like faithfully replicating, or more about that prep.
Yeah, I mean, we had Cuban photography books, and I think that, you know, just by looking at them, there's a lot of color there. And we wanted to make sure that that was represented in the film. And we ended up like painting a lot of buildings in Santo Domingo. And, you know, we wanted to make sure that the palette of the cabins where they lived in the sanitariums were also kind of bright and poppy. But as far as, you know, like a look, I think like it was like a very elevated documentary is what I was kind of going for. It's just like, I wanted it to feel like real life, but like a very beautiful real life. And I think one of the things that we were talking about from the start was that they really wanted to concentrate on not making like a movie that felt punishing. It was like they wanted to celebrate like the freedom and the found family that they find in the sanitariums, and they wanted to, you know, kind of celebrate the emotion and the hope and still have some of that tragedy be present, but not just to make it feel punishing for the audience. And so I think, you know, we really wanted like a kind of like a saturated palette, and we wanted to make it feel idyllic, even though you're seeing such a tragic thing happen. We knew that we also wanted to shoot handheld from the very beginning, because I wanted to kind of feel very real, like the camera's a person with these people reacting to them during the scene. So those were kind of our main references. Yeah, I mean, Robbie Ryan's work was a reference as well. Just like the handheld and, you know, just like the feeling of making it feel real and not so staged and lit.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. The first person we spoke to is a cinematographer who has a film here, Rachel Clark.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and she worked for Robbie Ryan on a few films. So yeah,
that's awesome.
We actually spoke with her about that too.
Very cool. I was trying to make it, because her film is today, right? I think it's today.
I don't know. We lost the screener. I know, we have the weirdest schedule. I don't know anything.
Yeah, I think there is a screening of it today, and she said there was one yesterday.
At 8 p.m., I think. But yeah, I'm excited to see her film.
Yeah, she's a very good handheld operator.
Yeah.
You'll notice when you see it.
Yeah. I love handheld work. It's like my jam.
I mean, you're so good at it.
It's so awesome, yeah.
It's the best.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scenes where the editing is very fast-paced in the movie. It's like wide, cut in, wide, next scene. You know, it's like so fast. And I was just wondering if the shooting was also fast-paced.
Yeah, it was. It was pretty fast-paced. Like they, you know, the directors, Michael and Tyler, they don't do many takes. It was definitely fast-paced. I mean, one of the things that we wanted to, they were very helpful in helping me, like, you know, like whenever it was like determining time of day for scenes, especially because I wasn't lighting a lot of the exteriors. You know, we had like I had worked with the AD to make like a very strict schedule of like when we were shooting certain scenes, so that, you know, the sun did most of the work and we didn't really have to do much to it. And they really kept to their word. Like it was, we would have, I would say probably around 4 or 5 takes for every scene. And that's including all the coverage, because of me just like going in and finding, you know, this, like the scenes essentially. We didn't have rehearsal time. Like we didn't get our cast until 3 days before principal photography, because they couldn't get out of Cuba. There was a moment where I remember going to Michael and just being like, hey man, if they don't get out, like what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
And he's like, we're not making the movie. And I was like, wow. Like I've been here for a month and a half. Like what? And he's just like, yeah, I mean, it needs to be these people.
This cast.
This cast. We cannot make it with people from a different country. It has to be Cubans, which is obvious. And luckily they were able to get out. We had like one day to do a full read through of the script, and then one day to do very quick like camera tests, makeup tests, and getting them into shape and like wardrobe and everything. And I think the majority of the rehearsal that happened was them playing their instruments. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they're very fast on scenes, and you know, we did shot list everything. Like we would meet up every weekend and shot list for the week. So we definitely had an idea of what we wanted in every scene, but they're very adamant of not telling actors where to stand or blocking. So there's never any tags on the floor, like any marks on the floor, because they just wanted them to feel completely free and playing the scene. And in reality, that's just kind of how we worked it out. So like the scene would start and I would just try and find it. And they would, we'd stop the scene and be like, okay, like we like when you go over here, we don't like this so much. And so like I would kind of like concentrate on that side and making sure we had wides and mids and medium shots and close-ups on the one take. And then they ended up, I think it was Tyler, they ended up coming up with this thing that we would do right at the end of every scene. And he called it the Santi special, which is like covering the scene with one camera in one take. And so during those takes from the previous coverage, I would remember like, oh, Paco kind of looks to this person like right before he says this line or whatever. And then I would remember that for the Santi special. So like I knew it was coming up and it's like, oh, motivated, and like it would motivate me to go over here and like, like, oh, he picks up his hand when he's about to say this, and like that would motivate the camera. And I think there was like, one or two of those kind of, I think that were kept in the film. But as far as like quick takes, we shot a lot that didn't make the film. And I think that they didn't want to lose those scenes. And so it was like two shots and you're out.
Yeah, were you picking specific lenses or camera? Did you make a camera choice based off like knowing that you might be working at that pace? Like were you just like, let's do a zoom and I'm just gonna like feel it out, or you were doing primes? And
I didn't want to use zooms.
Yeah.
Like I think if I used a zoom, it would take, like you would know, like it would take you out of the scene. Like I didn't want it to feel like technical and that it would like kind of bring you out of it, And so like I'd prefer the camera movement doing the work instead of snapping a zoom.
I guess I meant more like even like eliminating lens changes.
Just to do a variable prime.
Variable prime, exactly. Yeah.
No, I was like, it was just like, I knew it was going to be the Sony Venice. At the time, it was the Venice 1. And I knew it was going to be the K35s and the FDs because I know those lenses are probably overused, but I just wanted that texture and like that feel and those flares and the warmth, especially because we were going to be shooting in Cuba. Like it needed to feel like warm and it also needed to feel like punk, like it needed to feel dirty. And so a camera was the Sony Venice with a Rialto and like a backpack rig. And sometimes I just like drop the rig on the ground and I would just be, carrying the Rialto. And we made this like shoulder rig for the Rialto, and I was like on an ergo rig. So like I'd sometimes clip it onto the ergo and do this and then pop it off and put it on my shoulder. And sometimes I just muscle it, and because I knew it was going to be like I'd be going up and down. And then the B camera was the Sony Venice full configuration on a CG. So it was like the Steadicam arm with the CG cradle, and we went that configuration because most of my work was going to be with wider lenses, and I knew that my B-cam op, Fava Solano, would be on longer lenses, but I still wanted, I think if he was on an 85 without the CG rig, it was going to be insane, like just to keep it from being, like I wanted to make sure it was steady. So we put the CG on with like longer lenses, and it was still stable enough to shoot long lens, but it still had that kind of handheld feel. And then, like during scenes, it was just like a dance. Like he would be, I'd be covering two people or one person one actor, and then he would be kind of on one side covering another person, and then we'd just kind of dance around each other. So he knew that whenever I broke his frame, he would come around me and pick something else up. And then sometimes it was just like, hey, cover half the scene, I'm gonna break your frame, and then you could just go away. Like, I'll finish the scene. Sometimes, yeah, like actually there was tape on the ground, but it was tape to border him because he would be...
He'd be like creeping into your
he
frame,
also
right?
wanted
Yeah.
to get, great shots, right? And so like I would be on my shot here, and then he would start creeping in, and I would start like edging him, edging the camera out, like, and then he'd kind of like creep in more, and I was like, okay, put a line. I was like, that's your border, don't pass it. If you want to get a different shot or come around me, that's great. But yeah, because there was no rehearsals for the actors, and we were just kind of finding it. We were all just kind of moving around. I mean, and there were scenes where like all the interiors were lit from the outside, and I had some fill like from the top. So I had like, M90s, 18Ks coming through windows and diffusion and stuff like that. And sometimes the actors would just be out of the light where I wanted them. And so like during the take, I would just push them.
Oh.
and these are actors that, they're all very young. They have, some of them do have some experience, some of them don't. Like, the most experienced ones were Adria and Paco, who was played by Hector. But everybody else would, there were scenes where I was just like, I would be like doing an OTS shot, and like I would grab their other shoulder and kind of bring him into the frame. And then like during cuts, like they'd be turn around, he's like, dude, keep doing that. Like if you push me into frame, I know it's gonna be great. So just,
yeah, you had an understanding.
Yeah, like it's just like whatever you want. Like you're the hand of God. It's just like come in and put me where you want me. As long as it looks great, it's gonna be awesome. Yeah, it was very strange. But it worked out, I think.
Yeah, and that approach of the scene sort of creating itself while you're shooting, and then like you and your operator sometimes crossing each other and sometimes finding each other, like that applied whether it was dialogue, whether it was musical performance, whether it's baseball, like it was kind of across the film entirely, or did you find yourself doing it more during certain types?
No, it was throughout. Like I wanted to make sure that it was throughout, and I think like probably the first week was the toughest week, just because it was just kind of like understanding like our visual language and understanding how this type of filmmaking would work, and then it's just me and Faba like understanding like our kind of like our perimeters, and like we'd be operating and I'd be like kind of like looking at where he was, just to make sure that everything kind of was working, and then even during takes I'd be like, no, get closer, But after the first week, it was pretty seamless. Like we ended up kind of understanding that like this was going to be how we were shooting it, and yeah, just kind of like trusting that way of shooting, and me trusting him, because there wasn't a lot of time for us to check dailies during the day, but like at the end of the day, we would kind of check both cameras, and I knew what I'd shot, but I didn't know what he'd shot sometimes, and so I would like look at all his stuff and then be like, hey, for tomorrow I'll do this. And then after the first week and a half, like it was pretty seamless after that, but we shot pretty much everything like that. Yeah,
I think the results it really shows, like the whole, like the movement throughout is so kinetic and feels so organic. It's awesome. Yeah, I'm curious about like some of the tools that you might have used during the baseball scene in particular. Yeah, because that's like it has some like faster camera movement and some faster action, of course. So like were the tools that you described, were those also employed during baseball, or were there additional things brought in to move the camera that quickly?
Yeah, I'm sorry I laughed during your question.
No, yeah.
It is because it's so funny. You're gonna laugh too in a second. So we did have like a gimbal, like I forget which gimbal we had, but we did have like a gimbal that we brought on specifically for like the motorcycle scene. So like the gimbal was used as a remote head for those scenes, and we'd put it on the process trailer. But specifically for this one, I shot it the way that I was shooting everything else, and it was just me running behind these people as much as I could. There was a lot of running. And but there was at one point I just ran out of gas. I was like, I can't do it. It was like so hot that day, and it was just ridiculous. And then, we shot a fair amount of that baseball scene. And I knew the CG, if I couldn't do it with Rialto, the CG was impossible. And so I was like, okay, like this is the one time that I need like some sort of like dolly or something like that we can kind of roughly push, with the actors. And so we thought about using the wheelchair.
Maximo's wheelchair? Oh my God.
But unfortunately, Maximo was in the scenes. So it was just like, okay, we're not going to use that. And so I was kind of like, just like looking around and I saw a sandbag cart. So we strapped like a piece of speed rail to make the sandbag cart longer. And then they made me like a little platform on the sandbag cart. We put the gimbal on top of that, rigged it somehow. I actually don't remember. I think there is a picture I have to find somewhere. And we put the gimbal on that. And then I kind of stood back and I was just remote operating. And there was just like 4 people just pushing the sandbag cart as fast as they could. And that's how we got the shots.
Whoa.
That's so awesome.
It looked ridiculous. I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. I think it might. And yeah, I mean, give it to the Venice. Like, I mean, we were shooting 6K. It was going to be 4K delivery. So we had a little bit of stabilizing room. But yeah, it was so silly. And yeah, I remember Tyler being like, what the fuck is this, dude? I was like, this is what's going to get the shot.
Yeah, that must be a little scary for a director to be like looking at, like watching that kind of thing being assembled, but the results are the results.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It was, no, I got to say, it's like, it's so like I feel so lucky to have connected with Michael and Tyler. They're incredibly trusting, like, of the collaboration. Just like they don't care what anything is going to physically look like while you're shooting it. It's just like, they just want the results, and they're like, hey man, I don't know. If this is going to work, it's going to work.
We hope you're enjoying the episode, and now for a quick word from our sponsors. We'd like to extend our gratitude to Fujifilm for their continued support of this podcast and for helping us take the show all the way to Poland. Be sure to check out GFX 102, which is the latest camera in an incredible 90-year legacy. GFX 102 is an exceptional cinema tool for solo operators, commercial creatives, and dedicated cinematographers. Search the Fujifilm USA store or visit a local dealer to find out more. Next, we have CreamSource, an industry pioneer since 2005, designing and building innovative lighting solutions that power productions worldwide. By partnering with some of the best cinematographers, gaffers, and rental companies in the industry, CreamSource leverages expert feedback to provide purpose-built lighting products that address complicated production challenges head-on. A big thank you to SanDisk for their continued support of the show. Their lineup of extreme portable solid-state drives have become a staple on film sets and a personal favorite of mine for how durable, reliable, and fast they are. We also use the SanDisk Professional G-Drive Enterprise-class hard drives to store and transport these special episodes all the way from Poland. SanDisk leads in drive and memory card technology, emphasizing not just storage, but everything worth keeping. Lastly, thank you to Condor Blue for the cages for our cameras that we use to record this show. Condor Blue was created to not only design high-quality production accessories with the filmmaker in mind, but also to stand behind these products with a lifetime warranty, exceptional customer service, and fair pricing. Thank you to all the sponsors for all their continued support, and now back to the rest of the episode.
Tell another funny story is like Tyler, at the beginning, we were scouting, and I had my phone out a lot with the Artemis, and I was just taking a bunch of frames, and we were kind of like running through scenes with like him being an actor in it before anybody got there. And I remember I kept showing him these frames from the Artemis, and him being like, yeah, that's cool. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, he's not liking any of it. Like, I don't know what's going on. And I would show Michael, and Michael would be like, dude, that looks so sick. That's gonna be it. That's gonna be awesome. And then I remember turning around to Tyler and him just looking confused. And I was like, what's wrong, Tyler? Look, you're not liking any of it. Can you explain? And he's just like, yeah, it just doesn't look very good. And I was like, Tyler, you realize that this is just an app. Like, it's like there's no depth of field. Like, this is just
there's
like
no lighting.
Reference for composition. And he's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's going to look sick. And I was like, what? He just didn't realize what Artemis was for. Like, he thought I was like shooting actual reference frames with like a camera that has depth of field, and he just didn't understand it. After that, he felt a little bit more secure.
Yeah, what's interesting is I've worked with a few director duos, and I think working with them can be an interesting experience in learning what they maybe focus on a little bit more, you know, and kind of like trying to like read both of their body languages and like kind of create that dynamic. Like, was there anything, like, was it your first time working with a directing duo? Or, you know, and if not, like, are there any things that you know that you like to do or look out for when you're working with directing duos, or anything you do that's different than maybe working with a solo director?
I mean, I think it's kind of, working with director duos, I think it's kind of like speaking their language, right? And I think that there's some, like Tyler and Michael were like, it's a very easy process because Michael is more of the technical behind things. He used to be an editor. He was the only one that cared about what lenses we were shooting, what camera. We had like in-depth conversation. He's extremely smart, knows everything about cameras. And so we had like in-depth conversations about how we were going to shoot it, what lenses. And Tyler doesn't care. He used to be an actor. So he just cares about performance and working with the actors and making sure that it feels genuine. And so it was kind of like it was very easy working with them, specifically because they both had their kind of like their separate departments. And I think it's like a perfect yin yang. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just figuring out how they work together and what they care about. And that's like basically just speaking to them about that, you know, maybe having different conversations. But as far as director duos, I haven't really worked with director duos before. I mean, maybe at times with music videos. And I guess music videos, really, it's like the artist and the creative director are really the director duos, you know? So you're kind of talking to the artist about what they want, and the creative director has a little bit more visually of what he wants or she wants. And then the artist, like working with Beyonce, like Beyonce knows exactly what she wants. And the creative director is there to kind of like supplement that, supplement what she's saying and to talk a little bit more about the camera work that she might not be versed in, but she knows exactly what she wants. I mean, just one of the few people that is just like, hey, that light's not in the right place. Yeah. Like, I know what you want. Yes. We'll go higher with it.
Yeah.
But that's how I worked with them. And they were, I could not say more about how incredibly trusting Michael and Tyler are. And I think that, that trust let me be like a little bit more free. And I think it shows in the work.
Well, you kind of touched on this a little bit, that like you were talking about color and how the style of the film had to be like punk and like elevated documentary. And I love all the sodium vapor work. Like there's so much great work that appears to be a mix of like, it's a mix of like stuff that seems like it was available on location and then stuff that maybe you supplemented or added. And I would just love to know more about that approach to creating sodium vapor in the night exterior scenes in particular.
Yeah, like as far as the sodium vapor, like, sometimes we were kind of just using sky panels and vortexes to kind of get that look. But I was so adamant to getting like actual sodium vapor that my gaffer actually found these lampposts that were in Santo Domingo that we kind of took with us everywhere.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So there's like literal like lampposts that I have no idea where they sourced them from, but it was actual like sodium vapor globes with like their own ballasts and stuff like that.
Wow. So when they appear to be practicals in the frame, like those bigger like street lights, like those were not already there. No. You guys brought those in.
I've never heard of anyone doing that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Because I did feel like, like as good as the sky panel, like sodium vapor, look is, it still like doesn't feel right to me. Yeah. And so I really was like trying to look for sodium vapor globes. And so like, I think we ended up sourcing some in LA and got sent to us. So like some of that road leading to the sanitarium was those posts. And some of the posts that we found in Santo Domingo, I thought looked a little out of place. And so I would put those further away. So like you kind of see the shape, but it doesn't feel like that doesn't belong there. That's like a street light, like from a city. And so some of the globes that we were able to get, I put those much closer to the frame and then put the big lamppost that we had further out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest was just, a mix of like the vortexes and the sky panel, kind of like the HSI look.
Yeah, and your gaffer was matching them in HSI mode?
Yeah.
Cool. And just like
as best as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see what you mean. It's like you do have the need to bring in an actual one of those lights at some point, because then you're also talking about a point source versus a panel source. And like then you get into these problems of quality. And yeah.
And, just thinking, Cuba in the 1990s, like it just needed to feel as real as possible. And then just, like the point source and the sky panel looks completely different. So I think a lot of the sky panel work ended up being closer to camera and out of frame. And then the point sources obviously were in frame.
Yeah, right. Or that quality can make sense as if it's sodium vapor bounced off a wall or something. Yeah.
Exactly.
What about the day for night stuff with the scene on the raft? What were the discussions like leading up to like the decision to do that?
Yeah, so the day for night stuff wasn't meant to be day for night. It was written in the script as like dusk. And we were trying to get that during dusk, but we knew that there was no way that I was going to be in the water with a camera at night, where literally it's like the middle of the night and it wasn't going to work out. And so we knew that we were going to either shoot it at day and then try and continue some of that work at dusk. But it ended up being like, I think it was because of scheduling that we had to shoot it during the day. And so, for that stuff, it was mainly the sun. We got a little bit lucky because there were some clouds in there. So that broke up like the direct source of the sun. And then I ended up bringing up like mirrors and bounces to try and reflect that back. And then, I could not say better things about my colorist, Billy Hobson from Harbor. He killed it. It was, I think seeing that first version of the day for night, I was just like, oh, wow, okay. We did, it was fine. We did a good job.
Yeah. So was he making improvements on like a day for night monitoring LUT that you were working with, or you were just monitoring your regular LUT and then in post?
Regular LUT. Yeah, and I actually didn't know if it was going to work until, my DIT Jack Damon was also doing some looks. So he was doing like online coloring, we would try and do that as much as possible, but it was just like the handheld and all that stuff that didn't allow it after the first week. But he would basically color all the dailies in his little truck that they put him in. And so that was kind of like the basis. So at the end of the day, I would like sit with Jack and like do all the color. So that before they saw it, we worked on a LUT after the first week, and then that really helped out. But I would still do adjustments to Jack for every day or at the end of the week. And then we were feeding that to Billy, and Billy kind of just started his color work. But that day for night was a big surprise. Like it turned out better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I guess like another lighting related question. For the scenes where there's like speed ramping during musical performance, can you talk a little bit about the choice of units for that and what you planned for doing that high speed photography? Yeah,
those ended up being cream sources, I believe. Yeah, I specifically chose those because of their high speed capability. And like, we didn't really shoot that high speed. It was, I want to say it ended up being like 120. Mm-hmm. And for that, I think we ended up getting an FX6. So those specific slow motion shots are an FX6. And we kind of just try and time it as best as possible with the cream sources through Genlock. And I think it worked out pretty well. But the speed ramping, they really wanted to, and like the use of slow-mo, they really wanted to show like the sense of freedom that they felt in their shows and in being in their own communities, Mm-hmm. So that was the effect for slow-mo. I gotta be honest, like I kind of fought it at the beginning because I was like, but it just feels like too music video-y, and like, I don't know if I'm digging it. And they were like, no, it's gonna look great. And Michael was like adamant about it. And so like, I think I dragged my feet a little bit. I'm sure he would say that, but it turned out to be great. Yeah, you feel differently now seeing it in the film? Yeah. I think now, I'm like, dude, like it was such an obvious choice. Like, I'm not sure why I fought it. Yeah, no, but there's always that push and pull, right? Like, I feel like so many times, like, and it goes both ways too. I feel like so many times a director drags their feet on something that I might want to do and vice versa. And then usually when you see the result, it's like, okay, you were right. Yeah. I think I think the reason why I fought it so much was just because everything else felt like, like the elevated documentary that we were trying to make. And like, I felt like the use of slow-mo was going to kind of pull us out of that. But, seeing that as the only kind of like slow motion section and just like the way it kind of, emphasizes the freedom and the joy that they felt like playing their music. And I think that it was 100% needed.
Sure, like it's a flourish on the work, and it's not like something that like is baked into the entire movie.
Exactly.
And then to be clear, FX6 was the choice because of the higher frame rate capability. Correct. And then the Vortex is because of that syncing gen log.
The cream sources, yeah.
Yeah, or sorry, cream sources, yes. Yeah. I think just to kind of like wrap things up, I'm wondering if you have any personal touchstones for Latin cinema that influenced your work on this movie, or just your work in general.
Yeah. I think it was like, actually like funny enough that we talked about film school, like at the time that I was going into film school, there was like a little bit of like a resurgence or like a little bit of like a revolution of Mexican cinema, and so like, or Latin American cinema. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of when you started seeing like Guillermo del Toro and like Rodrigo Pietro and Amenábar, Alfonso Cuarón, Chivo. All those movies like Amores Perros and Y Tu Mamá También kind of came out when I was in film school. And I think I would say that those were like very, very influential. Just the fact that like Mexican Americans were being able to make such like amazing independent film. And it was like, I would say it was like super influential. Yeah, and I still look up to all of those people.
Yeah, and were there any films in particular that the directors were also bringing to you, and kind of like helping you kind of craft the like visual style or the tone that they were trying to set?
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about Amores Perros specifically just because of the handheld, and it looks kind of like a documentary, like it's very gritty. So it definitely spoke to them about that. We talked about it, Y Tu Mamá También, because it's kind of, same thing. It's like the camera kind of following them in their journey. And then we also spoke about like American Honey a lot, like Robbie Ryan's work.
Yeah. Is there anything in particular that you're excited about that's, happening in cinema right now, or things that are kind of trends that you're seeing, or things that you're really excited about filmmaking or cinematography?
I don't know. It's a hard question.
We ask it to everyone.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer if there's nothing. If you're very bored with contemporary cinema,
yeah, you can be critical.
Kind of like, I'm kind of loving like more like, just like indie, like just raw stuff, like I think like Anora, I think is amazing. Mm-hmm. Like Sean Baker's like handheld work, like for Florida Project was influenced as well.
Well, let me ask you about this. So, I think that before we started recording, you talked to us a little bit about, how you got your start coming up through working at rental houses, camera department, fashion, photography, and cinematography. That seems to be a pretty well-trodden path these days, is to come up through music videos, commercials, fashion, and then kind of work your way into maybe narrative filmmaking. Do you feel like you liked the path that you maybe took, and that helped kind of refine, some of the independent filmmaking instincts? Because we often hear about, oh, I didn't use any lights, or, the feeling that everything is just kind of there. And I think that were you to also say how little you used, I could have been convinced. And yet there's it's like the no makeup look,
Yes.
where it's like, it's so, like the work that you did in this film is so elevated. And it's like, I would love to just convince producers that it's worth that extra effort to shoot at the right time and bring in the lighting to really kind of elevate. It kind of like brings everyone up, and makes the production 100%. So much stronger. And it's like all these little things that you talked about is so fascinating, and it like completely invisible at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's really like applauding you for your work on it, because it's completely seamless. And I think you did a great job at creating that world.
Thanks. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like to make a point to tell everybody that it was lit.
Right, yeah.
You know, because it's like I don't want it to feel like it was like I did nothing and it kind of just fell into, you know, the scene or whatever, you know. But yeah, yesterday after the Q&A, somebody came up and was just like, yeah, so like, did you actually light any of it? And I was just like, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Like a lot of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I think Jack, I gotta give like a lot of props to Jack, my DIT, and Billy. Billy was just, yeah. I had a little bit of a bet with Michael yesterday because he was just like, hey, he's like, how many of these camera people are gonna say that it was shot on film, you think? And I was like, I think they'll know. And then like one of the first questions was like, did you shoot this on film? Because it looks like film, but it says on IMDb that you shot it digital. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
But that was just like I think the look, and then, you know, Billy just working on like a specific grain structure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then like the theater here is amazing. And like I think that might have been the best that I've seen it.
Is this the first time you've seen it screened theatrically, like outside of your colorist projection?
No, I've seen it a couple of times, but it's all been like smaller festivals.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been to, I want to say like 15 festivals at this point.
Yeah.
But it's always like the smaller ones. So like it's always been kind of like the smaller screenings, you know, like showing it on smaller screens. And recently we've been doing some like AMC screeners, but I wasn't able to attend any of those. So it's like, this was like the first like theater, like actual theater. Yeah, it looked great.
And the film does come out soon, right?
Yeah, it's coming out December 20th in LA and New York. And then on Christmas Day, it goes out, but it's still a limited release.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited for the world to see it.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and congratulations! And it has the screen it deserves now, which is so cool.
I know, it's
yeah.
so good.
Well, thank you for stopping by. This is a really fantastic conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor.
This episode was produced by Peter Pascucci, Ava Benjamin Shorr, David Cruda, Topher Hammond, and with original music by Out of Flux. We would like to extend our thanks to the Cinematography Salon community for supporting our efforts with this show. If you like what we're doing, please consider chipping in at patreon.com/cinematography salon. Every little bit helps. Once again, we would like to express our gratitude to our friends at Fujifilm, Cream Source, SanDisk, and Condor Blue for making these special edition episodes a reality. As always, please follow us on social media at Cinematography Salon on Instagram, or visit us at cinematographysalon.com. There you can sign up for our email list to stay up to date with all of our latest efforts, including additional podcast episodes, in-person events, and more. Stay tuned, and we will see you next time. Thank you.